unlikely, but what would you do if the Jets ran the table and the offense is humming the whole time? This is from Shaun of the Dead. I can tell you what will happen if the Jets run the table. They will be bringing everybody back with a new coaching staff. They'll probably do something like keep Brant Boyer, even though they shouldn't, because Brant Boyer is always here no matter what. Maybe it helps Ulbrich get a defensive coordinator job somewhere next year. Maybe it increases the likelihood that Downing is a holdover. I don't know if as the offensive coordinator, but as like a voice in the room, even though I think, again, I would just I want to clean slate the entire coaching staff no matter what happens the remaining games.
Right.
And look, I find it a little silly that you're just going to act like everything didn't happen before, but there's something to be said if you go out. It's easy for me to say that now. If they beat the Rams and they beat the Bills and they beat the Dolphins, especially if they beat the Bills in Buffalo, you start to feel a little different. Like right back, you're 7-10, like the Jets always are. They're 7-10 every year in perpetuity, it seems like at this point. We just had this long winding conversation about what the other quarterback options are. And it would be a very hard sell at that point to be like, well, Rodgers closed the year throwing for 320, 360, 330, 3 touchdowns in each game, and the Jets won their last 4 games. And now we're going to not do it again. So these things take a life of their own. And that's probably that would be what happened. Is it the right choice? It's a bigger, more complicated conversation, but it'd be hard for me to sit here in good faith if the Jets won their last 4 games and Rodgers was lighting it up, being like, they're insane for bringing him back. Now, my rare Benigno style negative Jets hat, we know what's going to happen. There'll be a whole other offseason of height and documentaries. He'll be back on Hard Knocks and he'll probably get hurt in like week 4 because he's 42. But
right,
I mean,
right.
That's like the problem. And not like that. Again, Tyrod's of course an injury risk too. But look, if they run the table, that's what's going to happen. I mean, what would you do if they ran the table in that scenario?
It's almost your best option when you run through it. Obviously, there's money things that need to be figured out, but the problem with discussing the Jets right now is they just feel like a house that the inside has not been painted since it was built. And then you walk in after they hire somebody with a brain, assuming they could do that, and you're like, "Whoa, this looks totally different." And I didn't even realize all I needed was a coat of paint. So now I'm not gonna. Right, you just nailed it. The same problems persist. Rodgers is only getting older. He's more injury prone. I think when things were like really going downhill for the Jets, it didn't feel like he was a guy that was uplifting everybody to keep everybody in it.
The Jets are a bandwagon team this year through and through. When things are going good, it's all good. But as soon as one thing goes bad,
they became a lot of independent contractors.
Yes.
And I think that they got to get those guys out. I see a couple of them on the defensive side of the ball for sure. But
he's talking about Reddick and Kinlaw. It's all right.
You're right. No, exactly. Yeah. Fuck it. Yeah. I don't care.
Yeah.
Those are the two top candidates of independent contractors playing at a scheme. Yeah. So it's probably your best scenario in that. But you need to do what Joe Douglas always failed to do. And that was have the plan in place when things go wrong, that you're not a Super Bowl contender, but you're a competent football team. Competent. The Jets in 2023, when Rodgers got hurt, it was like, we don't have an answer. Like, we think Zach Wilson's our backup. He can't play, but he's our backup. And then you lose a million games because he can't play, and then your backup answers are Tim Boyle, Trevor Siemian. So this year, while the offense has not been great, the defense has had no answer, it felt like, every single time. And there are things that are out of their control. Jermaine getting hurt. But they made bad moves. Kinlaw was a bad signing. Reddick was an awful trade. Thinking that Clemens and Solomon Thomas are real depth in a league where people get hurt all the time was an oversight. And you're not surprised by that. You've coached those guys for years. Kinlaw came from where Saleh came from. You coached him already. Like, this isn't surprising to you. They did nothing at safety in the offseason. So you need better preparation in terms of depth. That if Rodgers it comes down, this is the most simplified way of doing it. just predicting, say Devontae's back next year. Rodgers is, do we think, Joe, a top 22 quarterback in the league next year?
I would certainly hope so. That doesn't feel like a stretch to say. That doesn't feel like a stretch to say with some of the other quarterback play we're likely to see. I would assume in a worst case scenario, he's somewhere around that ballpark. He's not going to be a bottom 5 quarterback.
Who's available to the Jets that you can also say that about? Or I'll move the bar a little bit, because the money for Rodgers and the, how interesting of a character he is. Who's available that's a top 25 quarterback? Fields?
You would need a scenario where, like, you got a good combo Tyrod Fields year.
Right.
And you ran an offense that was very specific to their skill sets.
Right.
And you ran the shit out of the football. And then Tyrod's ripping some deep balls here or there. And, like, he plays like 12, 13 games for you. And when he's hurt, Fields comes in and keeps the chains moving. And, like, that combo is somewhere around that ballpark. That's me, that's it. That's kind of it. Unless you get, the fluky things happen. Like, do you get lucky? And it's not even something I can name off the top of my head. Like, do you take a quarterback in the second round and he has an amazing camp and plays and is like pretty good as a rookie because of like the situation? Because Brees and Garrett are awesome and the offensive line's good and they have a competent offensive coordinator. Or, do you do something bold like trade for JJ McCarthy because the Vikings get to the NFC Championship game and just pay Darnold? Like, there's a limited number of things like that. But Rodgers is, from an on-field standpoint strictly, it's hard to make an argument of what else would be better unless, like, you're going to trade up for the first pick in the draft, which is debatable if you'd want to do this year at all.
That's the issue. And once again, I'm not answering the question. Like, I'm not sitting here today and saying Rodgers has to be back. It's ridiculous. But you said if they run the table, does that mean he's most likely back? Well, if they run the table, then you're playing the scenarios out and you're going, well, he finished strong. Now Devontae wants to be back with him. The line, if they run the table, the line played really well. There's just a different mojo into it where you need that new coach, that new coat of paint that actually, once again, has a brain and makes adjustments. So it's going to be a fascinating offseason.
That's I'll close with this by saying that if they ran the table, I would fully understand the optics and reasoning behind bringing Rodgers back. I would say that, man, it's really risky and scary to overstock some late season, put some too much stock in late season wins and not carrying it over. Like, my heart is going to be, as a fan, be like, yeah, bring it back, run it back. This is awesome. We did this with Rex with the Gatorade bath when they went at 8-8. And then the next season comes and you're like, shit. And like, you saw a version of this with Antonio Pierce and the Raiders this year. This happens every year in the NFL. You get that late season dopamine rush. Let's see what happens the next few weeks. The Discourse Bowl home against the Rams, Discourse Bowl on the road against the Bills.
You beat the Bills in Buffalo.
That's it.
Like, you actually deserve this being
the Bills are the best team in the league by like a mile right now, I feel like. So you go in there and you beat them, like, it'll be interesting. I mean, it shouldn't be, because, like, I don't even know if they're, are they playing for the 1 seed there? Like, are you getting their A game?
How did the Jets force the Bills to punt in that game?
That's a great question. I'm just thinking of Josh Allen. I'm thinking of just Josh Allen running at Michael Clemens fourth. To be fair, I was there. The Jets should have beat the Bills earlier this year. They really should have won the game. They were the better team that night. Feels like 1,000 years ago. They should have won that game and have been in first place. But I digress, and I'm depressed talking about it now. Final reminder, Underdog, promo code Badlands, deposit match. Great season to do it. This is you got games Saturday, you got games Sunday, you got games Monday, you got games Wednesday on Christmas. Tough on the families, but good for you with Underdog. Use promo code Badlands. Get the deposit match. Get that usage in. Get the higher and lowers going. We greatly appreciate it every time you use the promo code. We greatly appreciate being able to give you a nice, full, healthy war room today. Apologize for some of the technical difficulties last week. Although we dropped Rewatchables, and you got to watch it because it's so damn good. And we're going to have some more of those this off season. CR, I will talk to you Sunday night. Will either be post-game therapy or our back-to-back post-game party, which we did do earlier this year. I don't want to act like it hasn't been that long. We did 2 straight with Titans and Pats, but very uncommon for us to get to do that 2 weeks in a row. So we'll see. Sunday night. Any final thoughts?
The post-game party is like I sent you the Lieutenant Dan on New Year's.
He's
my sitting there and the confetti falls on him, and he's like,
we beat Mac Jones.
It's
for
kind
4
of
and
what
10.
It feels like right now. I do this every year. I get really excited about a prospect. This has been since I was a kid. I've done this. It's how now in my 30s I cover the NFL draft for a living. And then you win a couple meaningless games, and the prospect just fades from you. And that's how I feel with Mason Graham right now. We're not there yet. The Jets are perfectly in position to get him. But, man, I said it on the podcast. I closed the regular podcast with this. Like, there are meaningful aspects of football development here for this team, and I would like to see them play well down this stretch, especially on offense, where I think defense, they need to be fixed schematically and add depth. Offense, in our lifetimes, we don't get watch a lot of high, potent Jets offense.
We haven't seen a lot of touchdowns.
You take them when you can get them.
We appreciate the touchdowns when we get them. We've been asking for them for years. I don't want to be a hypocrite and act like I'm not happy seeing Devontae Adams have 200 yards
awesome.
Pretty effortlessly. He's incredible. So listen, I made my peace with 5 and 12 and convincing you they should draft Tyler Warren for the next few months. Well, we debate out tight ends and defensive linemen again, as we always have. So thank you everyone for listening. Check back Thursday, new flight plan, new draft season, new Buck the Trend, new TOJ Talks, new 12-pack, and then we'll be back. So there's 5 other episodes coming before the post game. So we'll keep you busy. Thank you, and we'll talk to you soon.